Hello and welcome to the Analysts Academy. In this video we're going to talk about some basic strategies for engaging the estimate exchange. There are two things you should think about when using the estimate exchange. The first one is what questions should you pick to answer? And then the second one is once you've selected a question, how should you make that estimate? How much of a change should you make in the position? So let's start by thinking about how to choose a question. There are really three things three different kinds of questions you can pick. The first one, and we'll talk about each in turn. The first is a question that you know something about. Say, for example, you spent time in China, you lived in Shanghai, or you've studied China quite extensively, and you see a question about China. Picking that question makes some sense. You might also want to pick a question that just interests you. Maybe you don't know anything at all about China, but you see the Chinese question, you are interested in that. This is a really good way to learn about those things in which you're interested. The third option is picking a question where you can score lots of points. There are some questions where you'll see the current estimate may be way off. Either what you think the estimate is, or you may see an opportunity to score lots of points in some other way. This is a market, and there's lots of ways to score points in virtually any market. It's worth examining the questions just to see the places where you might be able to score lots of points. So once you've selected a question, the second thing you should consider is how much should you change whatever the current estimate is. If you look at the estimate exchange, you'll see that there's a current estimate for every question. And your decision is how much should I change that estimate up or down. And there's two basic strategies here. The first one is called a strategy of discrimination, and the second is a strategy of calibration. And I'm going to start by talking about the strategy of discrimination. When scientists who study estimation and estimators talk about discrimination, what they mean is the ability of an individual to determine what is or isn't going to happen. It sort of looks at the world in a binary way. It either is or isn't going to happen. If you were really good at discrimination, what you'd be able to do is tell me what number on these six-sided dice would come up when I rolled it. So when I roll the dice, you say, I think it's going to be a 3, and it comes up a 3, you would be very good. You'd be demonstrating your ability to discriminate between the possibilities that are embedded in a six-sided die. Many of the questions in the estimate exchange have this binary, either they will happen or they won't happen sort of aspect to them. For example, if you take a look at this question, will country X and country Y go to war before 31 December 2011? That will either happen or it won't happen. If you want to use a strategy of discrimination, what you would do is you'd look at this question, whatever the current estimate is, it could be 75%, it could be 33%. You'll either jack it all the way up to 99% or all the way down to 0.1%. Indicating that you think that it is going to happen or it isn't going to happen. Now, the benefits of this strategy is you bet big, you'll score lots of points if you turn out to be right. It costs a lot to make this kind of take this kind of position, but the payoff is substantial if it turns out to be correct. The other option besides strategy of discrimination is strategy of calibration. Most people are much more comfortable with the strategy of calibration. Voltaire, the famous French writer, once said, doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is absurd. And most people sort of intuitively understand that they're not certain about a lot of things, particularly questions that are as complicated as the kinds of questions we're asking. Things like, will country X and country Y go to war before 31 December? There's a lot of factors involved in that. And so most people are more comfortable saying that there's a 33% chance or a 75% chance or an 80% chance that this will happen by then. It's kind of like saying about the dice, instead of saying you will roll a 1 or a 6 or a 5, saying there's a 50% chance you're going to roll a 1, 2, or 3. The benefit of this strategy is that it allows you to add that nuance in there. The detriment is that if you win, you don't win as much. You don't win as big. So let's do a quick review. In terms of basic strategy, and this is basic strategy, there are really two steps. The first step is choosing the question. Give me a second here. Choosing the question. You should look at questions you know something about. You should consider questions that interest you. And finally, you could consider questions where you can score lots of points. And the second step is how much should I change whatever once I've decided on a question, how much should I change that particular estimate. Of course, there's a strategy of calibration, which we just talked about, or the strategy of discrimination. Good luck with your estimations.